Mexico, 1867. Glancing back on the past 45 years of corruption, citizens wondered what had befallen them. 52 presidents had come and gone, leaving the country in a hopeless state of economic instability, scorched liberty, and overall insecurity. Just across the border, another country blossomed, America. In those same years, the United States was august with innovation and economic expansion. It boasted assets of $160 million and extensive property rights. What was so different between the two countries? Why had Mexico failed while America had flourished? The answer? Their constitutions. While considered a democracy, Mexico had created and destroyed 4 constitutions in 4 decades. Unfortunately, the trend continues to the present day, where Mexico is certainly not alone. The average lifespan of constitutions across the world since 1789 is a young 17 years. So what makes the American Constitution unique? Why has it lasted 228 years? Why hasn't it perished along with its fellow documents? The answer is simple. The American Constitution was not created in haste, but with the future in mind. Not as a rule book, but as a document just specific enough, just adaptable enough, and just inclusive enough to outlast any civilly established form of government. Let's take a moment and step back to its inception. The early years of American history, after the completion of the Revolutionary War, were clothed with despair. Americans had won an immense victory and gained freedom from Britain. Yet Commander George Washington saw his beloved country fast verging into anarchy and confusion under its dismantled government. Our newborn country was a new starting place, a new experiment, but it was certainly not free of its own trials. Our Constitution was not born in the midst of peace and harmony, nor was it shaped by men who had endless time to create a flawless system. Yet, they designed it to endure. The Founding Fathers realized that should they choose to raise a government in haste, it would fail. But they also recognized that without some alteration to the Articles of Confederation, the American superstructure must fall. It was this knowledge that led them to carefully scrutinize their work, ensuring that it contained enough specifics to survive to adulthood. In contrast to France, where a National Assembly carelessly formed a constitution in 1791, America's founding fathers meticulously considered future exogenous threats to America that their constitution must be able to withstand. France's document reformed its government for a short while, but crashed under outside pressure in a single year. It was replaced by the Constitution of 1795, which fell when the country turned to Napoleon Bonaparte and his military dictatorship. Our Constitution worked where France's failed, because it was built for the future. A vital element of a long-lasting constitution is specificity, meaning that when a country decides to design a new legal system, they must not only anticipate future problems, but also ensure that during the writing process, all information is made clear to the negotiating parties. Hidden information in legal code and negotiation is the leading cause of short-lived documents. When Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, and representatives from each of the states came together to draft the American Constitution, all information was fully disclosed. Leaders were given a voice for their rights, and states held debates for individual ratification of the Constitution so as to assure that its provisions were evident to the people. Nothing remained undisclosed. And what was the result of these debates? The Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was the fruit of democracy for the American people. Our Constitution survived the creation process where others do not, because it assured the people participated in its formation. The United States Constitution is specific, but it is also adaptable. Unlike the precedent set by many nations, America wove together a constitution that would bend just enough so as not to crack under pressure, but was not so flimsy that it could not support the weight of its duty. One example of this is found in its language. The Founding Fathers gave us a constitution grounded in common law, Under this system, the provisions of our Constitution are not specific to a time period. Therefore, their text does not have to be recodified each time a new technological, scientific, or political innovation arises. Our Fourth Amendment is an example. Under this amendment, we are guaranteed privacy in our persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. While countries governed by civil law would change their constitutions to include such 21st century terms as e-commerce and electronic communications, American common law considers the Fourth Amendment terms broad enough to include such technologies as email under papers and cell phone as part of person without changing the wording itself. The Eighth Amendment is another place in the Bill of Rights where definitions are not provided, yet are subject to the interpretation of the time. Landmark Supreme Court cases, such as Waters Pierce Oil Company versus Texas, clarified the meaning of excessive fines, and Weems versus United States helped to define cruel and unusual punishment. The common law system constructs legal precedent for the future without changing constitutional text. While other constitutions, such as Russia's 1935 document, have been abandoned over wording issues such as these, the American Constitution has survived. With complicated amendment and ratification procedures built into Article 5 of the document, the Constitution of the United States has remained the shortest of any major nation. It stands strong at a mere 4,400 words. We can look at constitutions such as that of India's, erected in 1950 and already amended 99 times with a word count swollen to over 117,000, and see that America's is unique with its 27 amendments in over 200 years. Alexis de Tocqueville, in his book Democracy in America, observed that the genius of democracies is seen not only in the great number of new words introduced, but even more, the new ideas they express. With limited words, yet grandiose principles, America's Constitution has worked where others will fail because it remains intact generation after generation. But an adaptable constitution does not mean that a country is free of oversight and accountability. Rather, constitutions are safeguarded by adequate restriction on both citizens and government from overstepping their dictated roles. America has faced threats to its constitutional democracy, the first one rising only 25 years after its inception. Robber barons, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Vanderbilt, misused the American dream to build their monetary empire, threatening to control innovation and sever economic prosperity. In response, Congress passed the Sherman Act and other antitrust legislation to serve as justice and prevent these outside threats from destroying our democracy. Wars also disturbed American peace. The Mexican-American War filled many hearts with contempt for our government, and in 1861 we saw our nation threatened to be ripped apart by bloodshed, brother against brother, in a brutal civil war. Surely many thought that the end of American democracy was close. Conflict bred empathy and hatred among the people. But though they wavered, their law stood fast. A single change ensued, that of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, increasing freedom and decreasing discrimination for the people of the United States. 4 American presidents have been assassinated, an act that would have thrown many countries into revolts, but our Constitution remained intact. Perhaps the greatest destroyer of constitutions is found in the government itself. In Asia, the country of Thailand suffered deeply from their ephemeral constitution when government officials turned their 1997 democracy into a parliamentary dictatorship in 2006. Just 9 years later, in the newest coup, former Prime Minister Abhisit Yaachewa lamented, "They should be making parties stronger and governments more accountable, but they are now making parties weaker and governments less accountable." The Thai people perceived that they had representation through their parliament, when in reality they were being extracted of their money and their liberty. Thailand is not the only country suffering from extraction. Many nations' history tell the same troubled story. In Honduras, a constitution of 1982 took the country a step closer to freedom from what had previously been a military dictatorship. Yet unrestrained power led to 26 consecutive amendments, the 13th of which restored the president to commander-in-chief of the armed forces, re-establishing their quandary. The plight of Honduras continues. Resources are extracted by men such as Yanni Rosenthal, the newest presidential candidate and controlling hand of the economy, while their murder rate remains the highest in the Western Hemisphere. There's not a landowner to be found except among the richest, and the cycle of poverty continues as a result of an unrestricted and unenforced constitution. America, because of its constitution, has not yet succumbed to a reign of tyranny. Safeguards are instilled in the text against such regimes through provisions such as limited presidential terms, specific legislative procedures, restrictions on voting abilities for government officials, and a Justice Department. Each state reserves a right to power under the 10th Amendment so as to balance the control the federal government has over its people. Erected on this steadfast foundation, our Constitution has survived tumultuous eras of civil war, Great Depressions, failed foreign policy, and global struggles. It is specific because the text was crafted carefully. It is adaptable because its provisions accommodate changing circumstances. But perhaps the most vital preserver of our aged Constitution is its inclusion. The most basic element of democracy, inclusion ensures that the people are governed by the people, not by principalities, not by vices, but by their voice. The Founding Fathers knew that if they could give the people clear constitutional provisions, those provisions would be endorsed. And when the people knew they had inherent rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the Constitution would stand firm. In America, both the people and leaders must honor the principles upon which we built our country. The most important duty of the president is to revere our Constitution. He pledges an oath before stepping into command, saying, "I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, is a place where a child can aspire to become an anesthesiologist, a lawyer, a motivational speaker, or even a simple farmer, knowing that his freedom is his right. He can raise a family knowing that their lives will be protected by American militia. He can even willingly join the armed forces, not out of force like his Latin American neighbors, but because he is proud of being an American. We the people are the ultimate preservers of our liberty. Tocqueville rightly stated upon his observation of American democracy, "A sovereign power exists above these institutions which may destroy or modify them at its pleasure, that of the people." Both the history of our Constitution and its future success will be dependent on how we use it. It is a creature of our power. We must also choose to stand strong in the morals upon which our Constitution was grounded. It was built on the principle that a democracy cannot last without a people of upright character. John Adams believed that it is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles upon which freedom can securely stand. The only foundation of a free constitution is pure virtue. We the people must dedicate our lives to the task of ensuring that the American experiment does not fail by rendering justice upon wrongdoing and upholding that which is right. And we will not fail so long as our Constitution remains our symbol of sovereignty and statehood, and our people remain noble. While the constitutions of other countries mean little to their citizens, America's will stand on the pride and morale of its people. Looking back on the past 228 years, the world can scarcely cease to be amazed by the longevity of the American Constitution. It has threatened to be destroyed by forces both internal and external, but has stood fast. Yet, our Constitution is in danger of demolition in the 21st century. like Sweden, that replaced its legal system in 1974 after 165 years, American democracy could fall. Massive federal budgets, extensive illegal immigration, and diminished ethics imperil even its validity. Our once dead supreme law of the land is now considered living because through its power the Supreme Court has interpreted constitutional clauses beyond their originally expressed meaning. Only the people of the United States of America retain the power to resist the strong forces which pound against our document of freedom. And the people are fighting. Through voting, lobbying, and campaigns, the American people are preserving the Constitution they so treasure. The unlikelihood of a democracy surviving over 200 years gives credit to the shockingly beautiful intricacies of the American Constitution. Why has it survived when others have fallen? Why does it still live as a symbol of liberty when others like it have collapsed? Because it was crafted specifically for the purpose of enduring. It is adaptable to the whims of changing times, and it fosters the rights that people require to embrace it. A balanced work, our Constitution has set a precedent for future nations. Tracing its footsteps are countries such as Australia, Switzerland, and Norway, all of which look to democracy for prosperity and rights. The mother of liberty, America's Constitution, continues to defend its people while other constitutions have been crushed. It stands erect where others have bended. It delivers hope while other constitutions bestow only oppression. The question remains, are we, the American people, capable of preserving it?